Do we still support big tech investments?
Good morning. Labor market is on fire, but we have to remember it is 1 month release. So we can take it at face value because it's great and let's celebrate it, but we can't extrapolate it way too far because in totality, there are definitely weaknesses. I believe Reuters came out with some report about, and the Challengers report about losing tech jobs, right? Does that mean I don't support tech investments? No, because I do think that part of the tech jobs loss is correction on overhiring for AI. And this is happening all over the world, especially with Samsung coming out with some layoff announcements. Tech investments, I would still support because I know a lot of people think it's a bubble, but it's supposed to be a bubble when you have something this innovative. This is sort of par for the course. So I think it's still worth it to go along for the ride. But in the short term, I do understand the concern. But long term, it's still an investment.
Let's just dwell on that for a moment in terms of the overall data. I think it was, what was it, Ed? The Challenger data showing that half of all the tech layoffs, and tech layoffs have been behind most of the layoffs this year, half of them are because of artificial intelligence, Ed.
Yeah, and then there's a difference, or you've got to distinguish between layoffs that are announced and layoffs that are enacted. I also just want to spend a second on the moment, how wild jobs data is on social media in particular. And I don't know what your life is like before coming on Bloomberg Technology, but you'd think that this was a once-in-a-lifetime moment if you go on X. Bloomberg's Joe Weisenthal going, this is what we wake up for and why we all go onto social media.
I mean, he does do that every single jobs read.
Exactly. Is that, if you're a technology investor, is that what it's really like when you get economic data like this?
Well, you know, maybe, maybe not. It's not like that for me. So we're long-term investors, so it is exciting. I mean, I do participate in some of the excitement in the short term, but again, like if I'm looking at AI, I'm looking at the long-term potential. This one job number is just not going to really do anything for me, right? So yes and no, I do participate, but it doesn't affect what I do.
If it doesn't affect ultimately what you're up to, let's think about what it affects in terms of market sentiment for big tech and indeed the opportunity to see consolidation. We've seen themes of M&A, whether it's out of dire need and distress, like we saw ultimately in the pay TV deals earlier this week. We now hear of reports that companies that have been really beaten up from a market cap perspective are now being eyed to take private. Is that going to be something we see even as rates come down?
Well, the rates have to come down considerably. And, you know, talking about the job market today, there's a lot of fear. I mean, I think the market's repricing itself from 50 basis point total for the rest of the year to 75. I mean, I think it's gonna matter how far we go down. The Fed should still cut because I don't think the M&A market can be healthy at this rate. There's a lot of liquidity, people say, but there's liquidity for certain people, not enough liquidity for others. It's not like, you know, you can't paint with a single brush here. So for the market to be healthy, again, for there to be healthy level of M&A activity, especially in the IPO market, I think the Fed has to continue cutting. And I don't think today's jobs number is going to change the course of what the Fed has started.
We must look, I guess, forward to the rest of the year where we have a presidential election here in the United States. Does that impact the technology investor, even if you're a long-term investor, when you take into account policy, antitrust, regulation in this country?
Yeah, I would watch for a one-party rule because any law that is passed through Congress, there's a lot of fear about AI. What we saw in California about, you know, and it became a free speech issue. But there are a lot of these fears about, you know, what can be passed through in terms of deep fakes and AI, et cetera. These things, if we don't do it right, it can actually turn into something that can be a regulation that can actually hinder innovation. So I think doesn't matter which party it is, right? But certainly if you have one party rule, it would definitely increase the probability of something like that getting passed.